the most interesting facets of endocannabinoid activity on our brain is in one of the less obvious ways it affects us. Now, it regulates forgetting of all kinds, and it's not just forgetting normal things like what you had for breakfast this morning or what happened like a week ago, but it's also forgetting in terms of things that you usually wouldn't consider forgetting. It has a major function in updating memories and changing them and realizing new facts that you didn't know about previous events. So like one specific example of this would be elephants in the zoo. So elephants, when they're a little baby elephant, I'm not sure what that's called, but they're a little baby elephant, and they're in the zoo. So to keep them from going crazy and like running around and maybe escaping and hurting themselves or people, the zookeepers just chain them to a stake like that, and that holds them in place. And no matter how much they try to get away, they can't escape this stake, they can't break the chain, and so they're pretty much stuck in one spot. So after trying over and over and over, they eventually learned that they can't break this chain no matter what, no matter how hard they try. So as the elephants grow older, they never try again, even though a fully grown adult elephant could easily break that chain, but they just never try because they learned that it's useless to try to do it because they will never escape. And that is something that if you could show the elephant that it can in fact break the chain, then it would be learning that it actually can now. The process would actually use endocannabinoids to forget its memories of being unable to break it. And so that's really, in essence, a way of demonstrating forgetting that really isn't what we generally think of as forgetting, but it's still regulated by the same system. And it also is especially useful in overcoming traumatic events or fears. Like maybe if when you were a kid, like you got bit by a spider and it was poisonous and you went to the hospital and it was really scary or something, you might have this incredible fear of spiders, but eventually if you could get over it, that would be due to endocannabinoids functioning in your brain and helping you to overcome this past fear due to a trauma. And a more clinical example of how endocannabinoids help people forget is this experiment in which scientists had rats swim around in a pool, and there was a clear plastic platform in the middle that the rats couldn't see because the scientists put some dye in the water to make it obscure, like you couldn't see through it, and the platform was clear. So the rats would basically swim around in this pool like that until they found the platform. Once they did, they would stand on it, and then that part of the experiment would be over. So the researchers then took the rats out of the tub, took the platform out of the tub, put them both aside, and then put the rats back in, but there was no platform there anymore. So the rats would swim around, they would swim to where the platform used to be, because they thought it was probably still there, but then they would realize it's not, and they would try to find a new way out. But the interesting thing is what happened when scientists used rats with ECS systems who had been knocked out or blocked by, I don't know, some sort of chemicals or drugs. And basically, these rats couldn't forget about the platform being there. They would just try to swim over that one spot, thinking that the platform should be there because in their mind they couldn't forget about the platform being there. They couldn't update that memory. So in their mind, the platform was still there, and they were just really confused, swimming in that one spot over and over, trying to find a platform that wasn't there anymore, simply because they could not forget what they had learned earlier. So this really shows that in the learning process, forgetting is almost as important, if not more important, than learning in the first place, because without a way to organize all your thoughts, it would just become this jumbled mess. And it'd be like if you remembered every image that you've ever seen in your life. That's actually pretty much what autism is. It's just a sensory overload where people can't interpret everything that's happening, and your brain can't prioritize and forget the things that aren't important. And that actually leaves people to be pretty crippled from that.
So rats don't have endocannabinoid?
No, the rats that they used that couldn't forget were rats that they had genetically altered to non-functioning ECS systems. And another interesting function that is really not that well understood is how endocannabinoids help protect your nervous system. And one thing that they do that seems pretty straightforward is they protect your brain because 2-AG, one of the endocannabinoids that your body produces, is a promoter of vasodilation, which means that it increases blood flow to wherever it's stimulating. And in a damaged brain, one of the main problems is getting adequate blood flow to it afterwards, like after a stroke, in order to repair the broken tissues and help the brain heal. And another thing is that both anandamide and 2-HE, the two endocannabinoids, are really important in helping to reduce inflammation, and this reduces swelling. And that's really important because a lot of times the injury from having like brain trauma is actually caused by the swelling afterwards, not the injury itself. So utilizing these endocannabinoid receptors and chemicals in order to reduce swelling in the brain could be incredibly useful in helping to prevent people from getting hurt or, I don't know, maybe having major problems later on because their brain got screwed up. And another way that the ECS helps protect nerves is in individual neurons itself. So it helps protect the brain as a whole, but also individual neurons, like they can be damaged, and there's a disease called Parkinson's where there's nerves in a specific region of your brain called the basal ganglia that aren't functioning, and this causes people to just have seizures and all kinds of problems. And it's just caused by the deaths of a few neurons, and endocannabinoids actually help prevent neurodegeneration, which is the process of nerves just sort of breaking down. And it's not really sure, they're not really sure how exactly it does this, but it's assumed or it's probable that the endocannabinoids inhibit neural signaling, and that gives them a time to rest and heal, and it helps protect them from injuring themselves. It's sort of like running on a sprained ankle. You're just going to hurt yourself more. And if these endocannabinoids inhibit further firing, it helps protect neurons from injuring themselves. So far we've learned about the 5 functions of endocannabinoids, and they help you relax and sleep. They help you eat by increasing your appetite. They help you protect your nerves by reducing swelling on the brain and protecting individual neurons, and they help you forget things that you simply just don't need to know anymore. But now we're going to go a little more into the actual function of endocannabinoids and the mechanism that they operate by. So there's a lot of complex terms here. Basically, the only things you need to know is that those things over there are neurotransmitters, regular ones, that go from the presynaptic neuron to the postsynaptic neuron. And the one on the bottom is the postsynaptic neuron. So basically, those neurotransmitters on the top, called glutamate, go across the synapse and stimulate the postsynaptic neuron. And so then the postsynaptic neuron then receives these signals, and then endocannabinoids are released, and they go in the opposite direction to inhibit further firing. And this can have all those various effects. They can help you relax, eat, sleep, and those things. And these is really, really sort of weird, because in most things, when you're sending a signal along some nerves, it wouldn't really make sense to go backwards. Like, you wouldn't want your finger to tell your finger. Okay.
The ECS regulates these processes through endogenous ligands, such as anandamide and 2-arachidonylglycerol, and the CB1 receptor. CB1 receptors are located in the brain, digestive tract, muscle, and adipose tissue. Integration of these central and peripheral ECS components is achieved through neuronal and hormonal signaling. Within the brain, CB1 receptors are among the most abundant G-protein-coupled receptors. However, in contrast to classical signaling, where information travels from pre- to postsynaptic neurons, the ECS uses retrograde signaling. The information travels from post to presynaptic neuron. Let's take a closer look at this mechanism using a glutamatergic neuron model. When an action potential reaches the axon terminal, membrane depolarization triggers the release of glutamate. Glutamate binds to postsynaptic glutamate receptors, inducing calcium channels to open. During periods of intense neural activity, calcium accumulates in the postsynaptic neuron. This calcium buildup causes the synthesis and release of endocannabinoids from membrane lipids. Diffusing across the synaptic cleft, the endocannabinoids bind to the CB1 receptor, activating the G protein. Activation influences ion flow. The result, suppression of presynaptic neurotransmitter release. Endocannabinoids are subsequently taken back into the cell and enzymatically degraded. In addition to acting as neural messengers, endocannabinoids mediate paracrine and autocrine signaling in adipocytes, hepatocytes, and other cells.
So basically, if there's, I don't know, it was pretty complicated, but if anyone needs any explanation on what the video was talking about,